Okay, I am John Mark Manzione, editor of Bowlers Journal International, and you are watching what probably will turn out to be the first edition of the relaunched Bowlers Journal podcast. As you may recall, it was a SoundCloud audio exclusive platform previously. Now we're moving to video. I've got a little studio backdrop behind me. The lights are a lot brighter here than they have been on previous video efforts of mine. Staring at a camera in the midst of a ring light, and things look. It no longer looks like I'm in some haunted cave or something like that. So. All right. So Shannon Sellens is my guest on this edition of the Bowlers Journal podcast, this relaunched Bowlers Journal podcast. It's a really exciting. I've been working on this for months, Shannon, and I just want to thank you again for making time to be essentially my debut guest on this thing. I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. I appreciate you actually reaching out and asking me to do it. So
absolutely.
I'm excited.
Well, and so I want to kick it off with what by far will be the most pressing question I'll ask you over the course of this conversation, which is, how is Brady the Beagle doing?
He's actually right here. You can see
okay.
his nose. He's never far away. So
all
normally
right.
He's like laying somewhere, but yeah, he's like, oh, you're home. That's good for, an hour maybe.
Yeah.
He'll go back to sleep. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like that is one dog with his priorities straight if he's about to go back to sleep. So,
oh yeah.
So good. That's good stuff.
He likes his naps.
Wouldn't we all if only we had the time?
You know what's funny? He's 16. So everyone's like, does he do anything but sleep? I'm like, no, he does. He just, he likes his life of leisure.
Yeah.
This is good. It's a good space for him. He lives at the beach in his old
age. Nice. All right. Sounds good. So Shannon, and I know I've mentioned this to you previously, and for the purpose of this interview, I want to reiterate, there were a few reasons I wanted to speak with you. I had, of course, as we're speaking, the PWBA's 2022 season is rapidly approaching. And so I really wanted to make that the focus of maybe some of these early interviews I do on this relaunched Bowlers Journal podcast, but maybe not necessarily with bowlers that some might consider to be the usual suspects. In your case, Shannon, I think you're as fascinating a figure on that scene as anyone, because you've got this career away from the lanes, but anytime you show up to bowl, you're a threat. And I find that fascinating in so many ways. I wanted to maybe start there with your career away from the lanes, Shannon. For those who don't know, what is it that you do as your full-time gig?
So full-time, I'm a mortgage loan originator, mortgage banker. Sorry, Brady is here. So I originate loans for a lender here in Westbury on Long Island.
Okay.
We've been around for like 30 years, but I basically match up people with the financing that they need to buy a house.
Okay. So how did you end up getting into that line of work?
So oddly enough, when I first moved to New York, almost 9 years ago, I'm actually coming up on my 9-year anniversary as a New Yorker.
Nice.
I met the owner of the bank through bowling. He and his brother-in-law bowled a doubles league at the center that I just kind of started working at part-time. And he's like, you should come work for me. You should come work for me. And I'm like, no, I work from home. I don't have to wake up at any certain time. Like, why would I go into an office every day? And, things happen. And I always say it's kind of the perfect storm of events. And one door closes, one door opens, and it led me to this. And honestly, it's the best move I ever made. He is so supportive overall because he is a bowler. So whenever I go to travel and compete, he's like, okay, when do you bowl? I want to watch. Like, what's the streaming time? And so he always logs on to watch on Bowl TV and see how I'm doing. And he'll send me messages after I'm done, like, hey, tough block today, or, that was really great. Go get him tomorrow, something like that. So it works out well.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that it was something you didn't necessarily see yourself doing at first. You made the jump and it turned out to be a great move, because as a devout follower of Shannon Sellens' Instagram page, I know that one of the quotes you have on there is that things happen for a reason. And so it would seem like this opportunity is the very embodiment of that.
Absolutely. And I never, I have a communications degree. That's what I went to school for. Marketing, communications, the whole 9 yards. I was a journalism major for my first couple of years in school when I was in Wichita. And I never really thought myself as a sales person necessarily. I always was more of a behind the scenes person. And this is it's sales, but it's really just selling yourself and selling what you can do for people. And it's really creating connections. And one of the things that I've always been able to do is talk to anybody and create that connection. So it ends up being really beneficial for me because people trust me. They understand like what I'm going to do for them and that I'm going to work my hardest for them every day. So it just kind of goes hand in hand. And now that we're paperless, we have been for the last few years, it makes it even easier because as long as I have an internet connection, I can work from wherever I am.
Nice. Nice. The other thing that comes to mind with what you were saying about your I guess your boss essentially being a bowler himself is I was wondering about that. You know, how does Shannon Sellens figure out how to break away from her work life to go bowl some tour stops here and there? And it sounds like having a bowler boss is a big reason why.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I when I first met him, he was bowling like a random league at the center that I worked at, but he's very into it. He's actually a pretty good bowler. He's 200 average bowler, and his son bowled in high school, so they've always kind of been into it. Yeah, but it just makes it easy. I don't have to say, oh, hey, I really want to go bowl the Queens. Can I be gone for a week? Are you okay with that? I just tell him like, hey, this is the Queens week. If I don't answer my phone, this is why. But I'll always get back to you as soon as I'm done. And I let them know just so my office is aware, like if they try to get a hold of me and for some reason I'm not answering, this is why, I can't have my phone at this moment. But as soon as I'm done, I get back to every email, every text message, every call I get. So,
although I have to imagine that if any of those clients called you, didn't get an answer and it's because you're bowling, that would make for a rather interesting dilemma on their end, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't usually talk about it that much, but I had a business partner when I first started that had been in the business forever, and he used to tell everybody. He's like, "Oh, you have to ask her about this. She's a professional bowler." Yeah. And I'm like, yep, I am. But I'm just like, I'm there to do business. But now I will tell my clients, especially because they're used to me getting back to them so fast that I'm like, okay, here's the thing. If I don't answer you right away, this is why. And they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, how did you get into that? And it ends up being, a segue into another different type of conversation. But also I think it's something where they realize that I'm human, you know what I mean? I'm a person too, and I have other things that I do. So you can't always just expect me to be like at the drop of a hat, I'm going to be on the phone, even though that's kind of how I view myself. But it puts a face to it in a sense where they're like, oh, okay, she has a life outside of this.
Well, I love, as a guy who interviews bowlers all the time, I love asking bowlers who have full-time jobs away from the lanes what it's like when the people in their work lives away from our bowling bubble discover that about them, because it's like this hidden secret you're keeping from the rest of the world, right? So check this out. So I was talking with Brent Boho recently, and Brent was telling me that he does like Uber driving and DoorDash type stuff when he's not bowling. And because it's kind of a pain in the butt to keep taking all these 3-ball totes out of his trunk of his car all the time, he just leaves them in there. And he said sometimes people see them and they're basically like, what the hell is all that stuff? And then he's like, okay, so here's the thing. I'm a bowler. And then their next question tends to be, do you need that many bowling balls? So then he has to explain to them why. And it's hilarious hearing him have to explain to this sort of outside world that he's kind of got this habit on the side,
Oh yeah. It's funny. We actually had this conversation yesterday. We were at brunch. My friend Nicole's daughter's birthday was a couple days ago. And so we all met up for brunch, and her other daughter's boyfriend was like, I don't know why you have so many balls. I go, well, I kind of equate it to golf, and that's about the easiest way to equate it. I said, you have to have a ball depending on what you're bowling on. Same thing with golf, depending on how far away you are from the tee. And he's like, oh, like that makes sense. But I literally keep mine in my car all the time. I have like 12 usually in my car at any time. And then of course the question is, why so many? I'm like, I just really enjoy driving around ruining my brakes. And that's really that's why. No, I'm like, it's just easier. Like I have a garage now, which is nice. I moved in, I bought a new place, I should say, in July of last year. And so now I could actually take them out if I really wanted to. But honestly, no, I just leave them in there. I'm like, I just don't have the energy at the end of the night.
It's so funny though you mentioned that, because Brent said exactly the same thing to me. He uses golf to help people understand why he has so many different bowling balls. And I know nothing about golf, but he was talking about how like you need different drivers for different scenarios or whatever. Like you can't do everything with your putter on a golf course, and then like the light bulb goes off, and that's how he gets them to understand most of the time. So
I mean, it's not mini golf, so you can't use the putter for everything. But,
right.
I'm like a driver and putter kind of person, but no, you have to have, depending on how far away you are from the tee, you have to have an iron that'll do this, or this iron's going to go this far, or this wood is going to go this far. So it's probably the easiest way to equate it to people who don't know anything about bowling. Even if I feel like you're going to know one of the other, like bowling or maybe golf. But
Yeah.
I don't think there's another sport really that changes the equipment. Like tennis rackets, obviously, I'm sure there's a way in how they're strung, or string. I don't know how was it stringing? You string a racket?
Tennis is as familiar to me as Creole. So
yeah, exactly. I'm like, but I know that there's ways to like string rackets and like they can be tighter or looser. But other than that, I mean, the racket itself is the same. So I'm like, I feel like in golf is probably the only other sport that you could equate to like really explain why we have so many balls.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Shannon, I mean, when people see that you're in the mix in the standings at a PWA Tour stop and maybe don't know your name, it may help for them to understand that, your background is in some serious, levels of the sport, even prior to your pro life. Like, for example, your college bowling career, it was at Wichita State, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I bowled for 2 years for Wichita.
Okay.
And we were, the first year we lost a heartbreaking national championship by just a few pins. Second year, we finished, I want to say third. I can't quite remember. Mm-hmm. Our guys won my second year. So that was really exciting. But it's funny when people see me in the standings, I get a lot of friend requests.
That's interesting.
I get a lot of follow requests. I get a lot of friend requests from people who are like, I don't know who this person is. Yeah. And they go on social media, they see my name and they're like, oh, I want to follow what you're doing. I've had people ask me like, do you have an athlete page? And I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't. Yeah. I mean, I at this point I should have one for my dog, but I don't. I can barely keep up with myself half the time. But no, I get a lot of requests. But definitely, I had a really good collegiate career in bowling, but also outside of that, I know we were talking about some of my finishes before that, and I was at a time when the tour was winding down in a sense, so it really made my journey to this point so much, I think, more interesting in some ways, but also a little bit tougher. Yeah. If you think about it. So.
Oh, for sure. Like the Missy Parkins of the world, right? Like coming out of the college ranks when the tour met the prior incarnation of it met its demise. And you kind of, so you're a player who found herself in that tough corner.
Yeah, I mean, Missy and I are actually, I think she's a year older than me. So when we came out, the tour was folding. So if we wanted to bowl, we had to go bowl the PBA stuff when they finally allowed women to join. Or we had 2 tournaments here. We had the Queens and the Open. That was it. That was all we bowled for. So for me, I never really aspired to be a professional bowler. It was not something when I was a kid where I was like, oh my God, I want to grow up and be a professional bowler. Like I didn't have those thoughts. I bowled all the time. I bowled 9 leagues a year. My mother ran the junior program that I grew up bowling in, but I also played volleyball. I played basketball. I ran track. Like I did so many other things that I figured, I'll get out of high school, I'll go to college and get a job. Like that's what I kind of planned on doing anyway. And then, I had a good, time in college with bowling and finished up at UMKC, which is in Kansas City. But again, the tour had officially folded. So I graduated and I got a job and I bowled when I could. I bowled some megabuck stuff. Didn't have the success, obviously, that would have liked to have had, but I did bowl some stuff and, I just did what I could. And, I was excited when it relaunched because I thought, oh, this will be really great. I want to go out there and actually, see what I can do. And I'm not going to lie. I've really enjoyed the success that I've had. And I know there's a lot of people that are part of that reason, especially after moving to New York. I feel like I bowled well in Kansas City. I won stuff in Kansas City, but I didn't win to the level that I have since I moved to New York. And I think that directly has contributed to a lot of people that I have worked with, that I've been around, that I've been friends with. And it's just a different mindset. I've actually learned so much more about the game since I moved here, which is odd to say, but it's just been really great. And I've really enjoyed the success that I've had so far. So
you mentioned your experience at Wichita State being a really good one. And I was curious, who were your teammates and what was the era in which you bowled for that program?
So my teammates were Crystal Scott Wilson now. Yeah. So she was a junior. Katie Verbal, Jody Riddell, and Sarah Vargas were seniors my freshman year. I grew up bowling junior bowling with Jody because she was from right outside Kansas City. Okay. And then Crystal, we had Anita Arnett now. She was Anita Mans. Right. Mandy Edom, who is now Mandy Ceruliano. I think that's how you say her last name. Kathy Westberg, who's from South Dakota. Sam Wong, who is now Sam, what's Scotty's last name? oh my God, I'm drawing a complete blank, her husband's name, but Felicia Wong and Sam Wong are sisters from Canada.
Okay.
So Sam was a freshman with me. So we had like I think we had 5 freshmen come in my year from all over. I was the closest, obviously, from being from Kansas City, but we had a really good, strong team. And our freshman year, it was just such a heartbreaker because we bowled against Morehead State and lost by like 3 pins. Like it was a heartbreaker. But we had a really good team. We lost the 3 seniors who had so much talent and just combined experience. I mean, Sarah Vargas, Team Columbia for so many years.
Yeah.
And then after my freshman year, Olivia Sandham came in the year after I was. So her freshman year was my sophomore year. Ruth Rose, who was Ruth Papa from California. Now she's married to Mike Rose. She was a freshman with Olivia. So we had some really, really strong girls come in.
Yeah.
I left after 2 years for multiple reasons, but it was just better for me at the time. And they had, Jess Abel came in after that. Emily Fagan obviously was mayor. So they had a really strong group of girls that came right after I was there. So
yeah, that's a very talented squad. I'm familiar in particular with, I've seen Anita Mann's bowl some high-end stuff. In fact, I think she was, I went to a TNBA event in Ohio years ago, and she was one of the people in the field that was really kicking butt in that tournament when I was there. She looked great. Felicia Wong now is like besties with Valerie Bercier, I believe. And
they're both on the Team Canada, the Canada national team, and they're like right around the same age. Sam is a couple years older, so Sam's my age. But Felicia and Valerie are close in age.
Okay. Felicia's great. I see her. I've seen her. She posts videos of herself bowling, and I wouldn't be surprised to see her do some big things on tour at some point.
Absolutely.
At all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when was that now? What were the years?
So I was there 01 to 03.
Okay. So 01 to 03, right. And so the timing aligns, unfortunately, perfectly with the demise of the Ladies Tour in 2003, right? And so you make the perfectly legitimate, reasonable, wise, sober decision to say, okay, I'm going to do something for a living here, right?
I'm gonna get a job.
Yeah.
Gonna pay my bills.
But this is where I think your sort of the role that you play within the context of the PWBA Tour, the relaunch tour since 2015, is so fascinating because to me, it speaks as much to your talent as it would be had you won, some number of titles or something, to be able to say that you come from the outside. You come from having this full-time job. You're not there banging heads with the best in the world on a week-in, week-out basis, on a full-time basis throughout the entirety of a tour season. You're coming in when you can. You're picking your spots. And when you do, you're almost always very competitive, and in some cases making shows. And like what you and I've been talking about leading up to this interview, that you make the stepladder finals in Wichita in 2015, the relaunch year. You make the U.S. Women's Open show in 2019. You had a 9th place finish in Topeka in I think the same year, 2015. 8th place just last year, 8th place in a major at the PBA Tour Championship in Reno. Consecutive 25th place finishes in the Queens in 2019 and 2021. So, what amazes me about that, Shannon, is just as I said, I mean, you're not a Julia Bond or a Stephanie Zavala, out there constantly. How do you manage preparing yourself for that level of competition when you're not able to replicate the transition that you see on tour, or you're not able to just base your experience off of what happened last week on tour because you weren't there last week? How do you go about doing that?
So it's always funny. People ask me this question a lot, and they're like, "Oh, do you get to practice? Do this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." I hope the kids I coach don't watch this, but no, I hope they do. But I don't want to be like practice, and then they never do it because they're like, "Well, you don't." But honestly, so I work. I have my full-time job, and then I work part-time at a bowling center 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I also work for a skincare company here in Long Beach. Just something I picked up recently because that's all I seem to do is work, because Brady the Beagle likes his life. So have to pay the mortgage, have to get, I've always just been a worker. So for me, I don't have the time to necessarily go practice. The nights that I would bowl league or whatever that my friends bowl, I can't because I work. I do sub on Mondays. Actually, I have to go later tonight. I do it just to have an average. I've always had an average. So no matter what, I always try to get at least 7 weeks in of a league. But I think the difference for me, especially, and I don't know if anybody else who was in my situation that did get a job that then decided to come out and bowl would feel the same way. But I realized when I got to go back out in 2015, it was a desire more than a need. And I don't have to look at it like, oh my God, like I really want to do this, but I need a sponsor. And if I don't cash, like, wow, I'm in the red, or oh God, like I can't do this week. Like I work a lot because I like to live my life the way that I want to live my life. So I want to travel when I want to travel, and I want to, go buy whatever I want to go buy. And you know what I mean? I want to do those things, and I don't want to have to worry that I'm going to have to cut something else out in order to do that. Right. So when I go bowl, it's because I can, and because I want to, and I enjoy it. Yeah. So when the tour relaunched in 2015, I was like, all right, like, I'm going to go do it. And if I don't make a check, I don't make a check, but it's not going to be the make or break of me. And I think for so long, that's always been kind of the mentality people see when it comes to professional bowling. And I'm not saying the women, but I mean men too. Mm-hmm. You have those guys that are out there day in and day out, and you know that they're not making checks. So it's like, how are they really doing this? But I don't have to squeeze it to make a check. I can, if I throw a bad shot, I throw a bad shot. It is what it is. And we move on to the next day. But it's that bad shot is not going to cost me my car payment. It's not going to cost me my rent payment or my mortgage payment or something like that. So I think because I can truly enjoy it. Yeah. And I get to see the people that I don't get to see all the time. So I kind of like wrap it all up into, a good time. I think it's just a different mindset for me than it probably was when I was first out of college, maybe trying to bowl megabuck stuff. And I had, a crappy job that I thought was great at $28,000 a year. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. And now I'm like, how did I ever live on that? I have no idea. But it's just, I don't know. It's just a different mindset. And, my goal, no matter what, and no matter what tournament I enter, no matter where I am, is I want to always do my best, be my best, finish the best, finish the highest. If I'm the only female in the field, I always want to be like, obviously as high as possible. If there's multiple females, I always want to be the high female in the field. Like that's just a personal thing for me because I'm super competitive. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, if I don't, I don't. And it's not going to make or break me, but it just, it kind of drives me a little bit to where I'm like, all right, so next time we do something different and we maybe, think about this shot a little bit different, or maybe have a different routine, something. I don't know. Yeah. I put myself in such a different mindset whenever I go bowl tournaments, and I love the majors. I love the Open. I love the Queens. I love the PWA stops. They're actually, for being short days, it's a long format in a sense. We do bowl a lot of games, and I like that. Yeah. It's always kind of been that way since it relaunched. I just have a different mindset, and, my bills are paid no matter what. Like I have a job and I work very hard for my clients, and I know I'm going to be able to survive if I don't make a check. So. Yeah.
I remember Ryan Simonelli saying something to that effect during the approximately 5.5 minutes that he had retired from the PBA tour, which was so like he had this
just retire.
So he had this job, right, in like construction, I think. And he was telling me the same thing, how different it felt to bowl the tour without his mortgage payment relying on his release. You know, like that was a very different experience for him. And he actually had some success during that retirement period where he made a show or two. I think he might have won like a non-televised title, something to that effect. Yeah. But he was, you could tell that the weight had been taken off of him at that moment in his career for the very reasons that you just described.
Yeah. I don't care who you are. If your livelihood, your legit livelihood, and I mean your mortgage, your car payment, your rent, your whatever, your family's eating, whatever is relying on that. I don't care who you are. You're going to squeeze it. I don't care I don't care if you're Jason Belmonte. I mean, maybe he does it because I don't know, but you're at some point you're going to squeeze it because you're going to think about that, especially if you've had a rougher time leading up to maybe that particular show. If you haven't made a couple shows or you haven't, maybe you've got a check, but not like a really great check. Yeah. You're going to start thinking about that, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, like I need to make this happen. Yeah. And I think it's human nature. It doesn't say anything about the bowler that you are, the person that you are. I think it's human nature. And I think we all would do that if we know that like our livelihood's depending on it. So. Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that DeAndres Beatty says about nerves is how nerves, they too often are sort of stigmatized. And when you feel nerves, it's because what you're doing is important. It's important to you, and it's important in a broader sense too. And that's your body communicating that to you. And it's not something to like
in some way be ashamed of.
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny. People asked me in 19, they were like, "Oh my God, were you nervous?" And I said, it's not that I wasn't nervous, but it also wasn't that I was nervous. It was such a weird feeling for me because it's the first time I had been on live TV since 2003. I mean, I'd had the shows or whatever, but they were streaming. It's just different. I feel like if you're streaming versus like, oh, by the way, you're on, you know, national television and everybody knows you're on. So now they're all going to watch and don't fall on your face. Like,
so that was the U.S. Women's Open show you're talking about? Yeah. I
mean, it's just different when it was on Bowl TV, when in like 2015, when I made the streaming telecast, people watched it absolutely, but not everybody had access to Bowl TV.
Right.
So a lot more people have access to CBS Sports. And I had people that were in Vegas for nationals that were like, oh my God, you made the show. We're coming over to watch. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's
cool.
No pressure. And, you know, of course, you know, I lost the match. It is what it is. Wasn't my best game, to be honest. And my boss actually was like, you didn't smile very much. And I was like, yeah, well, I didn't strike very much. Okay, maybe next time, you know, if I strike a little bit more, it'll be okay. But at the same time, you know, I was super proud of myself at that show. It wasn't the best show for me, but I was super proud. And at the same time, I walked away with my head held high, and I finished 5th place at the U.S. Open. Come on.
Of course. Okay. But see, this is the thing that I really want people who watch this to understand, is to appreciate what it takes to finish 5th in a major that is arguably the most grueling on the tour when you're not a full-time tour player. I really think that speaks volumes to your talent and really your desire, you know, your commitment to going out and giving that a shot. Yeah.
I mean, I remember talking to Kelly and Dave Ryan after we were done. We always did like the interviews for TV, because they were like, well, we don't really know a lot about you because you haven't made the show. I mean, I've known Kelly for a really long time.
Sure.
But you know, you don't ask those questions in everyday conversation. Like, how'd you get your start?
Right.
But we were talking about it, and I said, you know, I told myself that last match, the position round game, I bowled against Diana Zaviala, and I told myself, no matter the outcome of this game at all, like no matter what happens, be proud of yourself. I was like, I bowled my butt off to get here. Like, be proud of yourself. And let the pins fall where they may. You know, I can make the best shot of my life and get 9, and it's happened a lot, you know, with the way I feel sometimes. But I said, you know what, I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to lay it all out there. And it fell my way, and it was great. It was a great feeling. But I just said, you know, like, I've done what I can do to get here, and that's all I can do. I can only control me. I can control what I can do up to the foul line. So, but not being able to like be in day out. Absolutely. I think it does have some sort of an effect when you're not bowling on it every single week, but at the same time, because I am allowed to kind of relax and I can kind of reset, go home, go to the beach, do something else like in those breaks. I think it also allows me to come back in refreshed for the next tournament that I do bowl. And I don't have to have the 4 weeks leading up to this next tournament to still dwell on what I did for the last 4 weeks.
Really good point. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now you had a fascinating, I think it was the 2018 Queens, where like in the last game of qualifying, you shoot 221 to force a 3-way roll off. Do you remember this?
I do.
What do you remember about that?
I remember going into that last game and I was like, all right, we got to have something. That was a rough tournament at times because I don't know, like things just didn't feel like I wasn't in sync at times. So I was like, all right, I got to do what I can do. So I did. And we get to it. And, you know, the ball reps, I love all the ball reps, like all the companies, they're great, but they're all they always end up walking around that last game or two. And they're like, okay, they have their little sheet out. Like this person's here and this person's there. And, okay, the number's going to be this, like, we're good. And everyone's like, you're good. And I'm like, are you sure? Cause I don't think I'm good, but like, okay, I'm not a score watcher in that sense. Like I'm not like, oh my God, I have to shoot a big game. I just like, I need to get every pin I can. That's what I told myself. You need to get every pin you can. So we get to the end of it. And of course they're like, well, there's a roll off. And I was like, oh good. And they're like 3-way. I'm like, what? I'm like, how did we all tie? So we end up like, it's me. I think it was Nina Flack. And, oh my gosh, who was it? It was the chick from Argentina. No, Venezuela. I can see her face. I can't think of her name right now off the top of my head, but we all had to bowl like to make the cut basically. I think there were like 3 or 4. Yeah. Like 3 of us for like 2 spots. And in practice, I didn't feel really great, but I was like, I shot 169 and it was just enough. I was like, okay. I'm like, that was, and then of course, like, because I was 64th,
yeah,
I had to bowl Jenny Wegner, who had gone like 7,000 over. And I'm like, oh, good. Congratulations. You get to bowl the top seed.
Yeah.
And I mean, she ran me over the first game or the first match, I guess. Threw me into the losers bracket, which, you know what? Honestly, my look was nowhere near what hers was. So it's kind of to be expected in a way, especially when you have that good of a look for that many days. And I battled my way back. I took out, I want to say Tish Johnson. I took out Danielle McEwen. I ended up winning my last match of the night against Estefania Cobo. She left a 4-pin and lost the game. I mean, I threw the first one and then I left a 2-pin. And so I was like worried of it. She throws the first 2, I'm done. And ended up winning that game. But I took out some heavy hitters and I needed to strike like 2 more times against Liz the next morning to beat her. Like we had a very similar look, but she just carried a couple more times than me. And I'm like, all right, like considering I almost didn't make it at this point, we're playing on house money, so it's
absolutely.
Okay.
And you're bowling the goat. I mean, you know what are you going to do, right?
I was like, you can't be sad about that. I was actually talking to my friend the other day about one of my very first queens, which was in Tulsa in like 04, 05, whatever year it was in Tulsa. And I skipped practice. Don't ask me why. Well, actually, I know why I skipped practice because I was like, I really want to go to this baseball game with Mike Edwards. He was like, a bunch of people were going. He's like, come over for the baseball game. I'm like, well, I have practice, but I can skip it. It's fine. Don't ever. No. So I skipped practice. I go to the game and I had to bowl the next afternoon. I make the cut. I was like 64th or 63rd. I don't even know. I was at bottom like 10 probably. Which, hey, I made the cut. That's the first goal, you know, and especially in the Queens. It's the one tournament you don't want to miss the cut because every round is new. And my first match was against Kim Terrell. And then I lost to her and then I bowled Tiffany Sambro. And I was like, okay, well, thanks for playing. And now you can go home. But no, I'm like, you know, you think about that. I'm like, some of these, I mean, these bowlers are amazing. These women have been doing this for so long, and it's like, you can't be sad about it.
you mentioned Wegner. I mean, my gosh, is she fun to watch? And when she can stand left and strap on it as much as anyone. And I'd love to see her bowl more tour steps. I was actually talking with Robert Anderson about whether or not they're going to, you know, they're going to like Sandra Anderson and Wegner and those, Josine, I think is the other one, right, out there. And it sounds like they might bowl some tour this year, which would be great. I mean, we didn't see him at all last year. I don't think. They weren't.
But obviously COVID was a little crazy.
Exactly. I actually interviewed Sandra Anderson about that about 6 months ago. And that's what she told me. It was like, there was nowhere to bowl for the longest time. And there was no way she would have felt ready, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, I get that. So I'm excited to see more of the international girls be able to come back this year. Cause you know, like the Singapore national team couldn't come back and bowl last year either. Like they're under lock and key. So it's going to be nice to see some of them come back and increase our entries, obviously, even though I feel like it was pretty healthy last year considering, but it'll be good to see more people be able to come over and bowl.
So Shannon, how do you think about the goal of actually winning a national title? Like on the one hand, it sounds stupid to ask someone, well, what would it mean to you to win a title? I mean, obviously it would mean a lot, but in your unique situation, I really wonder more specifically how you think about that. You know, if it turns out that you bowl these stops for as long as you want, for however many years you want, and you don't come away with the title, will in any sense that translated to some kind of, for lack of a better word, failure for you? Or like, how do you perceive this ambition that I assume you have of actually winning a national title? How do you think about that in your unique situation?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be like a failure. Obviously, you know, the goal is to win. You know, the goal is not just to cash. You know, I think back when I was younger, I think the goal was like, okay, let's get a check. We'll start there. And I always have like my mini goals in every tournament. It's making the first cut. Okay, we made the first cut. Now let's do this. Like, so I always have kind of a mental like mini goal checklist. But I think I remember, well, I should say back when the tour was done the first time before it had relaunched. There were some guys back in Kansas City that I bowled league with all the time, scratch leagues. They bowled with my dad back when I was like a baby. And they were always like, you could win on tour. Like you keep the ball in play, you see it in such a different way. And I never really thought about it at the time. Until I moved here and I bowled more and more and more. Like, I feel like every weekend I was gone bowling when I first moved to New York. And, you know, I won 4 state queens titles in a row. I've won the TNBA Rodman, like 3 times in a row. Like, there are things that like I had a lot of success at. And not that I wouldn't want to win a national title. Absolutely. Cause I feel like I have the ability and the talent to win. But I don't think that if I didn't ever win one, it would necessarily be a failure. I think the fact that I was able to go out, I was able to enjoy it, and I was able to make money at it and really enjoy that experience and look back on it fondly is kind of a win for me in a lot of ways. Plus, I've met some of the best people that I know through this sport. So being able to go out and see those people and say hi, you know, I can count Carolyn Doran Ballard as like one of my very, very good friends. You know, she's a Hall of Famer. You know, there's so many things about the sport that are great and about being able to go out and bowl. So, I would love to win a national title. Absolutely. I think that, like I said, I feel like I have the talent to do it. And I feel like I have the ability, but I think even if I didn't, you know, it's not going to make or break me at the end of the day. I feel like I've had a lot of success in this sport. And I feel like you could call my career a success even without that particular one.
Totally agree. Yes.
That it would be okay.
Yeah. Look, just with what you've done to this point, given the fact that you're not a full-time player, as we've discussed, to me is as significant achievement as anything I could think of on the ladies tour, especially given the quality of the talent you're bowling against. So I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. It's not easy.
It's
not easy out there. I think people think that it would be. And, you know, you have those people who watch on TV and they'll look at the guys and, you know, because obviously all the guys shows are playing right now. And, oh, well, they only shot this. And I'm like, you have
absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. You know, a guy named Michael Martell. Do you know Michael?
I do. Okay. In fact, I'll see him tonight at League.
Okay. So Michael Martell comes to mind because firstly, he's the son of my former high school bowling teammate, Michael Mastriani at Xaverian High School in Brooklyn. So that's why I know of him and his family. And so because of that personal connection, I have friends who bowl at like Melody Lanes and Gil Hodges and these places, Shell, if it's still around, Shell.
So, no,
okay. Who would tell me for years how great Michael Martell was. And I know that they're right. I know that he's great, which is why his very honest social media posts in the last month or two about his experience bowling the PBA Tour were such an eye-opener for me, because he talked about his struggles and he did it in a really candid, honest, straightforward way. And when I'm reading those posts and I'm knowing how good he is and I'm seeing the struggles he describes, for me, it helps me understand a couple things. Firstly, how brutally difficult it is to just have one successful event out there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But then, Shannon, these guys who, like this past season, who made shows as almost a matter of fact, like Tommy Jones or a Chris Prather back-to-back major show appearances, seeing what Michael went through this season, those guys who make shows routinely, I understand better now than I did maybe before Michael made those posts of just how inconceivably good those bowlers are, you know?
Oh yeah. It's amazing because like I said, I work at a bowling center and I loved the mask mandate for a few reasons. One of them was because people would say stuff and I would just walk away shaking my head like, what? What?
Yeah.
Like, what? And the stuff they would say, or like they would talk about the show and people, so many people have their opinion about, well, it's so easy and I don't understand why this and why that. And I'm like, you don't know. You really, truly don't know. And I can equate it like the 3 times I've been on live television, it is different. Yeah. It's the shot plays different. There are so many things that are different that you have to like adjust and, you know, change about what you did for an entire week, you know, that you wouldn't have expected to do unless you've actually been there. Yeah. And I'm not friends with Michael on social media, but I do see him and he bowls the same league that I sub in tonight. And I did hear that he had some struggles and I think it's to be expected. You know, there's kids here that are like, oh, I really want to go out on tour. And I'm like, okay, just be prepared to, you know, get your head beat in once or twice.
Absolutely.
And but that's going to be a really great learning experience for the next time that you go out. Yeah. I'm not saying that I've always had success whenever I shoot up. Trust me, I haven't. Right. But I just kind of have a different mindset whenever I go out. So if I go home and I don't have a really great tournament experience. Okay. I'm going to learn what I need to learn from it. You know, I'm going to take away what I need to take away from it, but I don't think that makes me a failure as a bowler by any means. When other people would probably consider that to be like, I can't believe you went out and you didn't do anything. I'm like, okay. Like, you're not out there. You have no idea how really truly tough it is. And I'll tell you what, I've bowled against men my entire life. Bowling against women is a lot tougher.
Interesting. Why is that?
That's something about, I feel like, the way women are built. And I think for so long we're told you have to have a stiff upper lip. You have to have this. You have to be this way. And it's not easy at all to bowl against women. I mean, and like I said, I bowled against men my whole life, but bowling against women is just a different experience, especially on tour.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, I think the kind of reflective nature of your thought process that you just exhibited in your last couple of answers is a good segue to the last topic I wanted to discuss with you, which is these posts that you make on Instagram that I love. Because like I said, I follow you on Instagram, and I'll be scrolling and there'll be, here's the latest like Shannon Sellens quote, right? And almost invariably, it's something that makes me think and reflects it, or it's something that in one way or another quickly connects to a life experience I've had, something I happen to have been thinking about. And a lot of times it's like the big things. It's big, like overarching life thought kind of stuff about where am I going and why, where have I been and where have I gone wrong? How am I thinking about my personal life or my professional life in a way that might not be quite correct, So there are a couple quotes I wanted to ask you about that you made on there. The first was this Michael Jordan quote. Now I have to say,
I love Michael Jordan.
So Michael Jordan, unfortunately for me, he crushed my dreams routinely when I was a kid growing up, a New York Knicks fan in Brooklyn in the 90s. So thanks a lot, Shannon. Really appreciate that. But he does say, failure gave me strength. Pain was my motivation. That was one of the quotes you posted on Instagram. And I just wanted to ask you, in what ways, if any, does that quote speak to your own personal experience, Shannon?
I think, so Michael Jordan's been my favorite athlete for as long as I can remember. I grew up, my aunt and uncle used to live in Chicago. So I used to go to Chicago every year as a kid. And that was the one thing I always wish I had gotten to do, was to see him play live. I never got to actually see him play. But I had a friend that took me to the All-Star game in Charlotte a couple of years ago. And I got to actually meet a lot of people, and I got to go to the Legends Breakfast, and he spoke. And it's the first time he's ever been to the Players Association, the Retired Players Association breakfast. Like, nobody knew he was going to be there. And my friend was like, calm down. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is like a thing for me. Like, I was in the back of the room. I didn't even care. I was so excited just to be able to see him. And I think in many ways, not just in bowling, but that quote is really it really speaks to me in a lot of ways. I think failing at anything you do, I've been fired from jobs before. I would hate, I think in a lot of ways I would have hated to admit that, but I also realized, like, now that I'm older, it is what it is. And it's part of life. It happens. And that like pain, I don't know if it's to call that pain, but like that feeling is something I don't want to feel that way again. So I want to get to a position where I don't have to feel that way again. Whenever I failed at anything that I've done in life, bowling wise as well, like, I don't want to feel that way again. So let me figure out what I can do to motivate myself and get to that position where I don't feel that way again. And I have control, and I have the upper hand. I'm lucky to coach high school bowling here. I coach in Manhasset with a gentleman that bowled for Erie CC upstate. He knows Jason Couch and like those guys, like, been friends with him forever. He's also a retired state trooper. He's like this big, like 6'4". He's a big dude. And he's like, you scare these kids more than I do. And I'm like, you're right. I do. Like, because I'm like, no BS. Like, no, we're going to do this. You missed a 10 pin. Give me 10 push-ups. So I'm a mean coach, I feel like, but he told one of the girls, he goes, Shannon doesn't lose. She doesn't get beat. She can beat herself, but no one is going to beat her in that sense. And she said, you really should talk to her and get the knowledge that she has. And I say, I'm waiting for one of the girls that I coach to be like, hey, let's talk. I want to know what you know. And even one of the boys, I'm like, I have all this knowledge that I would love to help bestow upon them. But I don't want to like give it to them unless they really want it, because some kids are just not interested in
that. Yeah.
But at the same time, he's like, she has a mental game that's different than anybody else you're going to be around, because she's not going to get beat by somebody. She'll lose because she did whatever, but no one's going to stand up and beat her. And I feel like that's always kind of my mentality. I don't want to be sitting on the bench to lose. I always want to kind of have that in my hand. And back when I said I'd won 4 state queens titles, my ex-boyfriend was like, I've never met somebody like you that like, you're always going to stand up and you want to have those like final shots. Like you want to like have to force them to do something. I go, I don't want them to hand me a loss. I'd rather be like, now you have to earn it. Like you have to do something. I'm going to do everything I can do. I'm going to double in the 10th. And you're going to have to do something. And he's like, he goes, most people be really content just sitting there being like, hey, thanks for the win. And I'm not, I don't know. I want to, I've always been a person like, I want to earn it in a sense. But yeah, I think in a quote like that, it's a matter of not feeling that way again and putting yourself in a position to not have to feel that way again.
All right, Shannon, this has been as awesome a conversation as I expected it to be. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to add? Any, maybe about your immediate bowling future, your hopes for the tour season this year? Anything at all you wanted to touch upon?
I mean, honestly, I'm just really looking forward to like, I didn't think I was going to miss it. I usually don't miss it that much, but for some reason I'm like really excited to get out there and bowl again. And, I'm excited to go next weekend to kind of start. It's like our kickoff, obviously bowling nationals. But I'm excited to see where this tour season goes. It is my last tour season in my 30s. I'll be 40 this year. So I think, I don't know. I have like I have different hopes, I think, for this year, just because I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this for a long time. Not just like in this sense, but like overall bowling wise, I've been doing this for a long time. And I think for some reason this year just feels different for me. So I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Shannon. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.